A student rode her bike and disappeared. The police began searching, but none of them could have imagined what alarming revelations lay ahead. In just a few days, there were so many shocking details in this case that even experienced FBI agents were horrified, and none of them expected such an outcome. Friends, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This is very important for me. Sierra Joanne was born on February 11, 1996 in the small American city of Delta, Ohio. She grew up in a very large and friendly family with 2 sisters and 2 brothers. Sierra loved sports and was on the school volleyball team. She also loved to travel. The girl dreamed of visiting Italy and made a lot of efforts to realize this desire until she finally managed to go there. During her studies, she began dating a boy named Josh. After graduating from school, they enrolled in different universities. Sierra planned to take a job with her uncle, who owned a metal processing plant, and the girl decided to get a degree in human resources management. She enrolled at the University of Toledo, located 50 kilometers from her home. Despite the distance, he and Josh planned to meet again and make plans for the future. The couple even began to take their time choosing wedding rings for their future wedding. After 2 years of university, she went to her hometown for the summer holiday. At the time, she still had some learning to do, but she decided to do it from home to spend more time with her family and her boyfriend. Sierra also had an internship with her uncle. At that time, she was already 20 years old, and the girl was well prepared to work there after graduation. On July 19, 2016, Sierra decided to drive to her boyfriend's house. A few days before, she bought a new bike and she couldn't wait to try it out. The girl left the house at about 5:00 p.m. He headed for Josh's house. Later that evening, her mother came home and found her daughter not there. She thought it was a bit strange. She thought Sierra should have come back by now. However, it was summer and the street was only beginning to get dark. Besides, the girl was already 20 years old and her mother did not worry about it. She allowed her daughter to stay at the boy's house. However, things changed when she got a call from Josh at 10:30 p.m. He asked if Sierra was home because the guy couldn't reach her. According to the young man, they separated around 7:00 p.m. and she has not been in contact since. Given that more than 3 hours had passed since then, the girl's mother began to worry seriously. Together with Josh, they started calling the girl's friends and relatives, hoping she'd stop by one of them. But no one had seen her that night, so Mom called all the nearby hospitals, but no one like her had been admitted. The woman decided to go to the police, and at midnight she filed a missing persons report. Despite the fact that Sierra was 20 years old, the police immediately began to look for her. Given that Josh had seen her last, they went to him. The guy said that the girl came to his house after 5 o'clock in the evening. About an hour and a half later, they decided to ride together. Sierra rode her bike and Josh rode his motorcycle. The couple rode the country roads along the numerous cornfields. Next to the bike was a woman's sock, which also had blood on it. He reported the finding to his colleagues, and other police officers arrived shortly thereafter. During a more thorough examination, they found several other items near the bike. They were men's sunglasses, a screwdriver, and a few car fuses. No less interesting was the fact that there were traces of motorcycle tires on the bike through the cornfield. All this was enough for the investigators to reach a disappointing conclusion. Most likely, Sierra was abducted. When things got serious, they started looking into Josh as a possible suspect. First, statistically speaking, it is people close to them who are often criminals. Secondly, that night Josh was riding a motorcycle and the Sierra bike had similar tire tracks. Besides, the detectives were wondering why the guy wouldn't walk the girl home. She was less than a mile away and he was on a motorcycle and he could have come home fast anyway. Josh let the cops search his house, his car, and his motorcycle. And this is where the police came across his overalls, which showed traces of blood. The boy said he wore these clothes on a hunting trip and the blood belongs to the animals. Investigators handed over the overalls to the experts, who quickly confirmed that he was telling the truth. Otherwise, nothing indicated Josh's involvement. The experts also examined the items found in the field and extracted one DNA sample belonging to an unknown person. Josh immediately volunteered his sample, and it didn't match. As a result, he was no longer regarded as a suspect, and the police began searching for other leads. The next day, a farmer called them. The man told them that on the evening of the disappearance of the Sierra, he was driving along the same road with his son. At some point, they noticed a motorcycle helmet on the side of the road, and the father told the son to bring it to the car. The farmer later examined it more closely and saw traces of blood on it, after which he contacted the police. The detectives admitted that the helmet could have belonged to the kidnapper, but his identity remained a mystery. At that point, the FBI was already involved, and the agents decided to take a close look at that Sierra photo that Josh had taken just before she disappeared. Thanks to the picture, they knew what kind of clothes she was wearing, but the detectives noticed something else. On the girl's wrist was a fitness bracelet. They immediately requested data on the location of this device. However, here investigators were waiting for failure. The device was turned off shortly after the disappearance of the Sierra. Then the police received another tip. Josh told them that when he and his girlfriend were driving down the road, a suspicious white van followed them. The guy had the feeling that the driver was chasing them. The car was driving at slow speed and slowed down when the pair slowed. At some point, Josh even tried to get to him, but the driver drove away. The guy thought it was weird, and he even remembered part of his license plate. The police quickly found the vehicle and its owner. She turned out to be a woman, and the detectives determined that she had nothing to do with the crime. In the conversation, she accused Josh of trying to drive up to her and run her off the road. As a result, the investigators decided that there was just a misunderstanding between them and continued to look for new leads. A few days have passed since Sierra's disappearance, but the police have not been able to find any further evidence. Then they decided to go through all the residents who had previously been tried for violent crimes and lived in nearby settlements. As they went through the lists of these people, they immediately noticed one person: 57-year-old James Worley. Josh even took a picture of Sierra on her bike, and the girl posted it on social media. After riding for a while, they decided to go home. Sierra and Josh separated about 1 kilometer from her house. The guy drove back on his motorcycle, and she went home on her bike. While the police were talking to the young man, other officers were driving around looking for the Sierra. They headed for the road where the girl began her journey home alone. Soon they were able to discover the first disturbing tip. Driving along the road along the fields, one of the officers saw that the corn stalks in one place were heavily crushed, as if someone was wading through them. He walked there with a flashlight, and a few meters later saw the bike of the Sierra. After examining it, the policeman saw traces of blood on the handles and he lived just a few kilometers from the field where the Sierra bike was found. The reason it aroused such interest among the police was very simple. James was convicted of kidnapping a girl in the 1990s. She was riding her bike when suddenly a man ran over her in his van, threatening her with a screwdriver, and he tried to get the girl to get into the car, but she managed to escape. Given that Sierra disappeared during a bicycle ride, as well as the screwdriver found next to him, the police quickly suspected James of her abduction. The investigators went to him to check this version. The man was clearly dissatisfied with the visit and stated that he had not killed anyone. However, he voluntarily allowed the officers to inspect his house. James and his mother lived on a 120-acre farm, and there were many different buildings in this vast area. It took the detectives a long time to examine them all. During the trial, James repeatedly told the police that he had not abducted the Sierra and learned of the case only from the news. Such behavior began to seem strange to them. The man literally repeated the same thing over and over again. But then they waited for something more interesting. Suddenly, James stated that on the night of Sierra's disappearance, he was driving down that road and his motorcycle stalled. near the same spot where the police later found the girl's bike. According to James, he saw her bike and decided to get closer, so he headed into the field, pushing his motorcycle beside him. The man added that while he was walking there, he had fallen off car fuses, sunglasses, a screwdriver, and a helmet. Suddenly, his motorcycle started up again, and James drove on, forgetting to pick up all these items. As you may have guessed, the detectives were very suspicious of this story. In addition, a witness had approached them only a few hours earlier and said that on the night of the disappearance of the Sierra, he had seen a strange van on that road. The witness drew attention to him because the car was driving at very high speeds, breaking every rule possible. He got his number and passed it on to the police. When the detectives ran the plates, they found out the van belonged to James, and during the search, they spotted him near the house. The man also allowed them to inspect the van, and the police found something interesting. Inside were a ski mask, duct tape, plastic ties, handcuffs, and maces. By themselves, these objects did not indicate his guilt. However, given James's conviction for the kidnapping, this set aroused suspicion among investigators, but the most horrific finds were waiting for them in one of the sheds. Detectives found a separate room there, behind a hidden door with an air mattress inside, and chains were placed next to it that looked like they were meant to hold a person in that room. Near the mattress stood a refrigerator, inside which the police found traces of blood. There was also a strong smell of bleach, from what they concluded that this blood was carefully cleaned. But the main evidence was the contents of a small box. There were brass and several pieces of women's underwear, one of which had blood on it. All this was enough to at least temporarily arrest James while forensics analyzed the evidence. The man was taken for questioning and asked to explain what the secret room was with the blood and chains. In response to this question, James gave them another questionable story, saying that he had built this room because he wanted to set up his own adult shooting studio. So it was just his improvised set. Of course, the detectives didn't believe what he said. The room looked like it was originally made to hold people against their will. However, they were still unable to link him to the disappearance of the Sierra as well as to her whereabouts. But everything changed the third day after she disappeared. During a lengthy search, the police found a freshly dug grave in one of the fields that contained Sierra's body. She was handcuffed and had a large plastic toy in her mouth. She was also wearing an adult diaper. Medical experts have established that the victim died of strangulation. However, they have not been able to establish even an approximate time of death. In addition, they found no signs of violence. Around the same time, OSU actively examined all the evidence collected in James' shed. They found female DNA on one of the duct tapes lying next to the mattress, and it matched Sierra's DNA. The policeman also got a geolocation on James' smartphone. Turns out the night the girl disappeared, he spent almost 2 hours near that place. They got another disturbing piece of evidence from the psychologist that James was arraigned for his previous abduction. According to him, during one of the sessions, James stated that he learns from his mistakes with each new abduction, and next time, he's gonna bury the bodies. Apparently, the psychologist decided not to report such alarming statements to the police and did so only after he was accused of murder. With this kind of evidence, the detectives have formed the most likely timeline. Apparently, that evening, James spotted the Sierra on the road, hit her with his helmet, and dragged her into the field with her bike. Based on his geolocation, the man was there until the sun went down. During this time, he called his brother and said that his motorcycle had broken down. Apparently, this was his way of creating an alibi. As soon as it got dark outside, James drove home, hopped a motorcycle to a van, went back to the field, picked up the Sierra, and took her to his shed. At the time, she was either unconscious or shackled. James was the only one who knew what was going on. Apparently, he abused the victim for a while, then killed her and buried her in a field. The experts only assumed that the victim could have been there all 3 days. The man himself continued to deny all these charges, and the case was brought to court. The trial began in March 2018. The prosecution provided additional evidence that further pointed to his guilt. Turns out the key to the handcuffs the victim was wearing was found on James' keychain. His lawyers decided to stick to the theory that James just wanted to set up an adult film studio in his shed, and the cops pushed it to murder. However, they never provided any adequate argument for their client's innocence. The trial ended in less than a month, and on 28 March, a jury found him guilty. James was sentenced to death. The execution is scheduled for May 20, 2025. Of course, for detectives, this story was far from over. Given what they found out about this man, the police were certain that James had committed similar crimes before, but he managed to avoid accountability. Investigators are still working his case, trying to connect the unsolved disappearances to James, but no concrete results have been found yet. The parents of the victim had established a Sierra scholarship and had also been involved in the creation of a law under which the state would make a public registry of people previously convicted of murder and kidnapping. The bill was quickly supported and came into force on 20 March 2019. Share your opinion in the comments, and do not forget to like under this video if you liked it under this video. I also recommend subscribing to my channel, where I publish the most interesting criminal news from around the world. Thank you for watching,